You're Snapchatting this?
Okay, we're going.
Sorry.
Snow bunny. Okay, so we're going to look at Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, verses 9 to 14, I think it is. All right, are you done with that?
Just trying to find.
Fred, make her stop.
I wish I could.
Shenanigans.
I was just trying to find the right.
Oh, brother. Maybe we should just start this one
Yeah,
over.
we're on
Actually, I was still
we're on video here, Rhonda.
All right, I got them. They're going to pay for this.
Look at that. Okay.
Just-
Okay, anyway.
Yeah,
so
just go. Just go.
These are the last 6 verses of Ecclesiastes, where Solomon, being gifted with the impartation of being the wisest, wealthiest man who ever lived, and he writes the book of Ecclesiastes. Otherwise, in Hebrew, the word is kahillet. Kuf He Lamed Tav, that's his name, which is the word that's translated as preacher, or the guy who has something to say about things, for the benefit of everybody else. You have to take off?
I have to go get Barry.
Oh.
I'll
Okay.
be back, will be back.
All right, well, we can go back over anything if you guys feel like it.
Okay.
So,
Well, Rhonda said it's all on video,
that's
so
right.
we'll get it.
All right. So anyway, in verse 13, one of the interesting, what we would refer to as the jots and tittles, is that there's an enlarged psalmic, one of the letters which is written abnormally. Verse 13, in my translation of the verse, says, to summarize the entire matter. That's the word soph. Soph is if you put a yod vav in front of it, the word is Yosef, yod vav samik pei, which is Joseph's name, which means to gather everything up, where we get the word sofa and yom suf, the sea of reeds, sucking up something like soup through a straw. That all these are pictures, like the sea of reeds, a reed of straw. To gather everything up, and at Joseph's threshold, also it's the word goblet, but he dispensed things back out when he gathered up all the grain from in Egypt for the 7 years. That's the same word. The letter Samik is basically like an engineered structure, like the shape of a tree, or the shape of a power pole, or the shape of a trellis, or the mast of a square-rigged ship. And it means literally to support. Joseph was placed as vizier of Egypt as a support to the people through the 7 years of the famine. But anyway, it also means to summarize, or to put everything into the proper arrangement so that it can do what it's supposed to do. So as a model, that letter Samik, basically drawn in paleo like that, can actually also be drawn like that.
Whoa, really?
One version, it's almost like a picture of a rudder, of a wake turning propeller. You could draw it like that. Just different models. But the thing about it is that it can also be seen in the aspect of a menorah, which is a candlestick, which is a vine with branches, which is bearing fruit or light if it was above if the branches were lit. It's this engineered structure, and again, according to the Mishkan pattern, lining up with day 4, excuse me, where you put the sun, moon, and stars in the sky according to their jurisdictions. So it also has to do with the concept of principalities, or times, or seasons, which is the word for that word moed. Plural would be moedim again. So things placed, and to place something is the word amad, ayin mem dalet, which is to stand something up, like standing up dominoes or standing up trees, or putting things excuse me, in their properly engineered position to be able to impose a load on them for strength and structure. So if you were to build a colonnade, you'd have a certain number of posts and put a bearing load on top of them with some kind of a beam, and then put a roof load on top. All that's a picture of somic. So for kahelet, this is the word kahelet, which is preacher. Like I say, that's the word translated Ecclesiastes. And this word Ecclesiastes is where we get the word ecclesiastical, or ecclesia. You know, ecclesia is the word that's translated as assembly or church. Just a second.
Do it smaller.
No, okay, I just had a... Anyway, that's where we get the word ecclesiastical. So the ecclesiastical authority is where you get the, the little cone-shaped head on a chess piece,
A bishop?
a bishop. And the reason why they have this little headpiece like that is the Dagon fish head,
Yes.
which is what the priests of Dagon used to. I'm just saying, all these things come from the same word, except if you want to analyze the word kahelet, let's see, it's translated just as preacher. Kuf Hey Lamed. I didn't have this particular word ready here. Page 564, assembly, congregation, gathering. That's basically what it means.
Was there,
Kufei Lamed.
is Ecclesiastes a word that really was in Hebrew?
No,
Or is
what
that
I'm
a
saying,
made-up thing that came from Greece?
that's a Greek word, but what I'm saying is the word kahal, where our letter Q, you might say kahal, Q-A-H-A-L, kahal, is the word that means assembly. And it became known as the book of Ecclesiastes, which comes from the word ecclesia or ecclesiastical, which is the word for the assembly gathered, which is the same word that we think of as church. But the word church came out of the word kirk, the Scottish thing, and the word circus and circle, which is a whole other Circe, a deity of, I forget what she was deity of, but it's all the same word is what I'm saying. So the same word that means gathering together to listen to truth, you might say, is what this word means. Kahal, a gathering and assembly. Page 564. Summoned, gathered together. But the word to summon and gather together in Hebrew also is the word ikra, yod, kuf, resh, aleph. You put a vav in front of it, that's va'ikra, which is translated as Leviticus, and it means he called and assembled, gathered together to learn how to read Scripture. It's all the same, that's just another word with the same meaning. Anyway, what I'm saying is that this is, verse 13 is where Solomon, Kahelet, preacher, says the summary of the debar, the all. So, this is the complete summary of the matter, the debar, the word. The word debar can mean pestilence, plague, but also, excuse me?
Bees? Debar, is that bees?
No, that's translated as word. It's also the word for word, speech, or matter. Like the 10 devarim, the 10 words, the 10 matters, otherwise known as 10 commandments. That same word debar can mean, excuse me, your reward, your pasture, the promise that you were given, but it's also pestilence and plague, which is you might say the bad thing. It's the good thing, the bad thing. So this is like the summary of all the matters, whether good or bad. This means the all or every, or the totality. The totality of the whole matter is, here you have the word Shema, which is here, and then there's this letter Nun in front of it, like this lightning bolt, which is to say, do this. When you see the Nun as the first letter of a word, it's imposing this lightning bolt action. So that's like this imperative. Here, aleph-tav, and this says the, this is a prefix letter, means the, and here's the word Elohim. So this is translated as God or gods, but the other way to read this is that this word Allah, that's where you get the word, the Arabic word for Allah, and it basically means to deify, or it's a female, because it has a feminine suffix, like a goddess, but it also is simply the word for these. And then the Yod Mem is plural. So that's what I was saying earlier, that the word Elohim might mean powers, or gods, or powerful agents. You could say listen, but the word Shema is not just hear or listen, but it's believe, and then do it, put it into practice. So the other way to read the word Shema is that Mem Ayin is where we get the word for a little incremental piece. Shin Mem is the word for name. And so you could say, well, listen to every detail regarding his name. And so I can say, well, the concept of the aleph-bet, when he says this is not just the alphabet, but it's, the word Shem means name, fame, renown, reputation, and the occupation of all the things you're concerned with, all your preferences and dislikes. Alphabet itself is composed of incremental pieces of everything that he determined was his business. So I could say to pay attention to every little detail regarding his name, but his name is not just how do you pronounce Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, it's the entire alphabet. It's all the little pieces of everything he's dealt with from the incremental perspective. So that's, just to double check, that's Mem Ayin. It's where you get the word mote, I believe, Mem, as in a little tiny thing. So this would be page 364. There's no word Mem Ayin, Hey, maybe? Mem Ayin Hey means a grain, a small weight, a kernel, a small coin. And Mem Ayin, if you add the suffix Vav Nun, which again, it doesn't really change it so much, but it's a dwelling, a habitation, a den, or a lair. Mem Ayin Vav Hey is the word iniquity or perverted or a distortion. So my take on all that is that the word Shema, meaning to hear, if Mem Ayin is every little thing where you are at, that's why you get a small little den or a nest or a lair. That's your hangout, that's your place, that's the place where you feel comfortable being. And Yahweh designed the aleph-bet as his place, where that's where he's to be found. That's his personal familiar surroundings where he's like in your lair. You put your favorite items on the wall, your favorite furnishings, your favorite music, your favorite lighting, that's like your zone of comfort. And that's what he made. Every little piece of it is his Shem. And when he tells us, pay attention, is not just to hear, but it's to be able to analyze, appreciate, and wrap your mind around to where you feel comfortable there also. That's what I get out of this word Shema. And then the Elohim, it doesn't necessarily mean the gods, but if you take the word Elah as meaning these what? It could be referring back to these Mem Ayins, which is essentially every letter of the aleph-bet. Because every letter of the aleph-bet is these powerful things, these things with great potential of productivity and use. And then when he says Yirah, That's translated as the word to fear or have regard or honor, but also this word yod can be read as a prefix, and so you get the word resh aleph. And if you look up in the dictionary under resh aleph, you'll see that it actually is expressed as yes, resh aleph hey. And so I'm just trying to show you how to deconstruct Hebrew to analyze how it goes together. What's the difference between resh aleph and resh aleph hey? Look at another word. You've got zadik, which is righteous, and then if you look at zadikah, with a hey, that's righteousness. So by adding the hey, which is a feminine suffix, it's the expression, it's the manifestation. So what I'm saying is that if the word yod resh aleph means fear, the yod is a suffix or a prefix meaning he will. And so what I'm saying is that you can take a three-letter that you call the verb and say, well, if it's not really the verb, I mean it is, so I'm just trying to show you another method. I'm not trying to invalidate real Hebrew, but somebody might say I am. What I'm saying is if you consider the yod as the prefix letter and a is the suffix letter, the root of it is still resh aleph. So fear or reverence, and if this is that which is manifest or expressed, which is exactly what the letter hey means. It's drawn, the other thing is drawn like a stick figure of the letter hey, right? Like bringing attention to. So what I'm trying to get at is, what does it mean to fear Yahweh or to reverence Yahweh? And we were going back, wasn't it to Proverbs chapter 1, that was one word mentioned?
Yeah.
It boils down to the word resh aleph. And because the dictionary doesn't tell you resh aleph, but shows you resh aleph hey, I'm saying that though this is a prefix and that's a suffix, you have to look here in order to see that. And resh aleph hey literally is the word translated to see, or perceive, or to comprehend, or it also says here that he allowed himself to be understood. He allowed himself, he put himself on display, so it's also the word for exhibition. Something that you might go see at a museum, where something was set up, put on display, and then made open to the public, or even to one person. It was put on view intentionally, like going down to the train museum. They take certain pieces, put them on display to show as typical of all these other things. What I'm saying is that that's what the letters of the alphabet are. The letters of the aleph-bet, by this description, is that he, the creator of the heavens and the earth, who created Zavot is legions of various options of various things, chose these 22, put them on display, and if you can see what you're looking at, he's telling you everything necessary to revere him, to regard him. He allowed himself to be perceived, and that each one of these are powerful entities, Elohim, and then this word alef-tav points into the direction of, the word is mitzvotio, and this means my as a suffix, and this means he or it. This is where we get the word matzah, but that also means to find. It is, you could say, it, looking at each one of these letters, is the mechanism by which I am to be found. It also means to find out how to do something. So what I'm saying is that if you analyze the structure of the Hebrew, there's another way to read this. It's translated, here's the summary of the whole matter: hear Elohim, fear his commandments, and whoever does this for all men. It's kind of like saying, fear Elohim and do what he says. This is the sum total of everything that man's job is to do. But more, if you read into that, there's the engineered structure whereby every matter of strength, power, capability, by analyzing the increments, the pieces like the kernels, each little grain of the aleph-tav is the way to find out how to do something, and that thing is to shamar. The three major commands he's given us is shema, shomer, and asha, which is ayin, shin, hey, which is do. So hear, guard, and do is the three things he keeps saying. Me is the word for who. Za is the word for this. And then the word kol is all. And then this is the Adam, which is basically the man, which you could say is humanity. And the word for shamor, see there's this little vav put in between the three-letter verb root shin, mem, resh. So you could read that as to say, well, is this the action over this? Or is it to say, whoever, of any man, of all humanity, whoever does this, will be guarded. So you can't necessarily read Hebrew and put it in an order of, it's not like English syntax, grammatical structure, where you have, remember learning grammar in grade school, where you have subject, predicate, subject, verb. In Hebrew, it shuffles around, which is why you get so many different translations, which means even the professionals don't know where to put it. So what I'm saying is, it's, I think, a free option to say, I can choose to believe that if I pay attention to every letter of his Shem, the aleph-bet, and understand how they work, to finding out not only how to do something, but finding out his identity, his Shem, then whoever does this, of any man, which includes us, whether you're born as a Jew, or born as a Gentile, or born as an African, an Asian, an Indian, a whatever, shomer, shin, mem, vav, resh, means watch, keep, guard, protect, which is, I'm suggesting, is the promise that we can claim,
We need a chair for the doctors coming out.
which is to say that's the reward. It means watching, guarding, preservation. It's the same word for eyelid. So the same way that your eyelid protects your eye, if we put our eye to preserving Yahweh's stuff, the reciprocal benefit, the mirror image that we gain as the blessing for looking over his stuff, as if we were his eyelid protecting his eye, he will protect us as if we were his eye. And I find that same parallel in other verses expressed almost exactly that way. But then you have to understand what these words mean, and then start noticing them in other verses so that you can plug in the equivalent variables the same way I was trying to plug in the equivalent Vayikra with Kahelet. I'm just trying to show you an analytical way of processing through these words. Okay, so here's the thing. If we look at this word, yitar, vayatar, vav, yod, tav, resh. This word simply tar, where we get the word tar, literally means to search, explore, to make the active effort towards looking at something. But it also means abundant, excellence, advantage, and has to do with leftover excess. This word here means to exist. So this whole word could mean search. And this is to exist. Hey yod, hey, hayah. It's the same verb as Yahweh's name, which means he will cause it to exist. Or when he said Yehi, let there be light. It was yod, hey, yod, which is any use of the letters yod, hey, and vav are the same verb to exist. But this whole word means prolong, endure, delay, or linger, or interruption, for something to be extended out longer. This is the word chakam, which is wisdom. This is the word that we had said before means repeatedly and forcefully, so it's like this big exclamation point. This is the word for knowledge, da'at. You might say da'at, knowledge. Aleph-tav is a pointer to, this is ha'am. And this word am is where you get the people, but it's people that are yoked together. So it's sometimes just translated as with. Lamad, if you get, this is where we get the word mode or model, which is where you get the word fashion, which is also where we get the word something tailor-made. Tailor-made, which is a garment fit, so you get measure or meter. So the same way that you would get a song fit to a certain rhythm, or a tailor fit measured to your size and shape, it all comes from mem dalet. Lamad is also lamed, which is where you get the word teach and learn. Anyway, so to wrap that all up and make sense, if this is an interruption, if this is to interrupt or to pause, or to delay, so if you were doing something, then there's a gap, and then, or if you have a graph, and then, like on an oscilloscope, like a heartbeat, all of a sudden, like, gee, somebody's dead. So for us to be in the dispersion, to be Yahweh's people, and then all of a sudden there to be a glitch, and something interrupted, or like a dead part until it kicks back into activity again, that's what this is referring to. So you could say if there was music, and then a blank space, and then it picks up music again, something's been lost, something's missing. So the same word to exist can be this word sheen can be a prefix, and it would mean that which is in the condition or belongs to. So what I'm saying is that what is it that you're searching for? What is it that the preacher is telling us to search for? It's essentially like the Moody Blues did an album, in search of the lost chord, in search of the missing link, in search of, gee, why have we lost Yahweh's favor? Why does he seem to be contrary to us? Like the Jews have this thing in Fiddler on the Roof. Gee, I know we're the favored people, they say, but we're the chosen people. Could you choose somebody else for a while? Because all they've done is gotten whacked. Because there seems to be this void, this missing thing. So everybody, even on the face of the earth, I've heard all this talk about, gee, something's coming, something's about, it's like, what? Everybody feels like we're at the edge of something kicking back in, and what might that be? Well, according to the words, it's, everything's a fractal pattern. If you read the aleph-bet, there's the first 7 letters, where I'm going to do this, and then the 7th letter is a cutting off, a weapon, and 8 is a fence. So there's one impasse. And then there's these other letters. Mem is where something is hidden, and Nun is jumping out, so there's another break open there. Zadi is a picture of resurrection, so there's another breaking open there. There's a veil between the laver and the covered place where the menorah was, so there's a break between the Nun and the Samik. And then there's this letter Kuf, which ascends unto something else, so there's another transition. So what I'm saying, within the alphabet, there's these various places of transition, and if that's a fractal pattern of Yeshua, who was put to the death on the cross outside the fence, that's Zion Chet, and then he resurrected Zadi after 3 days and 3 nights, and so then he rose up, Kuf, and he's coming back. Kuf also means sun on the horizon in the future after this. So there's a picture of his ascension and return in the letter Kuf. The history of humanity, what I'm saying, could also be seen as being able to be read in the fractal pattern. So if what Yeshua's life was also a fractal model of Israel, was also a fractal model of even our lives, individually, it's also collectively of humanity. So if we can see where we are, we should be able to read within the aleph-bet something about eschatology. So, to put all that together, in search of this lost chord, that which ties everything together, the answer to what is missing is in this word wisdom with an exclamation point. So there's another way to read this, that you could take any culture, whether they know the Bible or not, whether it's Eastern, whether it's Western, whether it's pagan, whether it's savages, they're all looking for the same thing, and it has to do with wisdom. So the concept of wisdom let me give you some other words here. This means to hearken or give ear. The word azen is the word for ear. It's also like a contractor wears a belt where his tools are on it. The same picture. It's the implements. To weigh carefully in balance, which is, so the word for ear is virtually identical to the same definition as the word for ayin. So if you can put things in scales of balance, just like you can weigh kahilit with vayik, or you can weigh ezen with ayin, it's the same thing. It means give ear, listen, balance, weigh carefully. It's a handle, it's a level, it's a belt or an implement or a weapon. So there's other words that mean the same thing. This word here means search, examine, explore, spy out, investigate thoroughly, or a philosophical inquiry. So this is essentially the same type of word as that. This word here, tav kuf nun, is organized, prepared, amended. This word here is not only search, but it's also constitutional. In other words, he set something up, which I would say is what the whole alphabet letters, which is the organized structure, this letter Samic, of his constitutional. So anything you're going to search for, this word chok is where you get the word commandment, and kuf resh is 2 letters of the word vaikro, which means precious and dear and costly. So the thing is, what's lost is regarding as precious, dear, costly, valuable, the things he instructed, which is the wisdom of how to make a success out of this life. This word here not only is constitutional, but it also means to spy out in a philosophical, so it's not that you're looking necessarily for an object, but the concept of how things fit together. And this word tav kuf nun can mean straight, right, perfect, instituted, in order, norm, standard, arrangement, adorned. Very similar, again, to what this means, very similar, again, to what ayin vav dalet mean. And then mashal is a proverb or a parable. So the word proverbs itself is mishli, that's what that is. So this is the word proverbs. Proverbial, it's something that's like this. The word, it's also the word for forklift or hoist, like we did in that video. So you could say, what is a proverb? A proverb is something that you look at one model and it'll actually is the thing that lifts you up to this whole other elevation. It's how do you transcend dimensions, even, with parallel regard, as on heaven, so on earth, that type of a thing. So if you can see one model, like the Mishkan pattern, you can see the model of the 7 days of creation, and at the same time, see it as the same pattern as the 7 Moedim, see it as the same pattern as the, as we talked earlier, the Garden of Eden and the Mishkan and the Beatitudes. That's all being able to read Mishli. So if somebody says, oh, that's not what it means, it's like, okay, so you can't ayin Zion Nun, and you can't ayin Yod Nun, and you can't Shin Mem ayin, and you're telling me that I'm wrong because you can't see it? Even though it's the engineered structure of every incremental piece of the kernel of what he declared was his Shem, that doesn't make me wrong because you can't see it. Whoever it is I'm talking to. This here, Haravah, Resh Bet is where you get the word rabbi, or high, or great, or wonderful, and it basically means the best, most, and ultimate. The fact that this is a standardized comparison, allegory, fable, poem, it's basically where you get the word for fractal, that this is where the fractal model. And again, the word model goes back to here. So what I'm trying to show you by some of these things where I'm relating the words to the other things. See, when you write all in the same color, it gets really confusing and hard to see. That's why I use these different colors for what it's worth. But, so go through and read this. Search anything that exists through all assemblies. That's like saying, check any culture, anywhere on the face of the earth. What are they looking for? What got lost? Wisdom. The wisdom of what? How to have a successful life. Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing? I was talking to a guy, one of my clients up in Portland. This guy's an incredible success. Multiple degrees, engineering, highest levels of different, you might say, clandestine organizations. Wealthy as he wants to be. And I was talking to him about the purpose of life, why we're here. And he says, I have no idea why we're here. Completely got right past him. And he's in his, I think he's in his 80s or so. I mean, he's an older man, somebody that if anybody had the opportunity, had applied the effort of success, which he certainly attained, you'd think that this guy would have bumped into the reason for life, and it's eluded him. So, what's wisdom? And again, you can take the Mishkan pattern and plug this into the fence, the barbecue grill, and the laver. Choose life, learn the Torah instructions, and take them to heart, and the manner of which you do will become you unto noon, jumping out unto eternal, your eternal being. Your eternal self will be the extension of how you decided to choose life and take the Torah instructions to heart, which is Yahweh's personal ways and means, and that will be the incubation chamber for who you are forever. That's where wisdom is. That's what wisdom is. So, according to the manner, the fit measure that you did that, knowledge, the people knowledge give ear, constitutional. So here, I'll summarize it in this sentence here. Search for the missing link, the lost cord, that which ties contradictions together. Search everywhere, any culture, every time, wisdom repeatedly. What is success? What is a stumble? Or how to encourage on the path? Knowledge is a garment for listeners. Knowledge is a garment for the people who will listen. A measuring instrument with which to investigate, like binoculars by which to spy out and search. The same way you'd grab some binoculars to search, or grab a tool, an instrument, a tape measure by which to determine something, so he's given us.
So by those garments, and like when we run across verses like in Zephaniah and stuff like that, where they're talking about strange apparel, that's what's being talked about.
If you go somewhere else to get the tools, the instruments, other than what he's given us, things will look different. Strange apparel, if the word garment, there's Bet Gimel Dalet is a word for garment. Samik Mem Lamed is a word for garment, but this is also a word for garment, something fit. There's also one other word, I can't remember offhand, but what I'm saying is, when Yahweh said that he was going to give his people a special occupation. The other day we were talking, likened it to a chessboard. There's all these different pieces. Some of them are duplicated, but look at the bishop. Going back to this little ecclesiastical guy here, the kachelet. There's two bishops on a chessboard running diagonal, one on the black spaces, one on the white spaces. So Yahweh says to his people, forget what everybody else's job description is. You, Israel, are my kadoshi. You are my specially sacred one, and I have a job for you. You're supposed to be dressed in these garments of righteousness, zadakah, which is right doing, right comprehending and knowing, according to my personal ways, according to my fit mode, fashion, model. So he makes the ayin dalet, this word, which he keeps saying again and again. Israel, this is for you. This is what I've determined for you, and you're supposed to run on these spaces only. Nobody else can run on those spaces, but you are perfectly fit for exactly looking like me in this manner. In Israel, historically, looking at the scriptures, says, oh, wait a minute, I like the way those Assyrians are dressed and the way those Egyptians are. So Israel has picked up Egyptian and Assyrian, the pantheon of their deities, their attire, their food, their culture, their customs, which is why he let them be taken into captivity by those various people. But what he said was, don't do that. And if you do that, you will lose your job description. You'll lose the capacity to function. So for Yahweh to say to his bishop, run on these certain diagonal, like the hypotenuse, which we'll get to in a minute, your track is this hypotenuse between these two right angles, running on the diagonal, and Israel says, no, we don't like this path. So Yahweh said, okay, I'll let your enemies take you over and make you conform to their path until somebody in the future generation decides to come back to the path that I've prescribed for you. And what I'm trying to show you by deciphering what's embedded within the language of even verse 13, going back up here to verse 9, is to say, what are we looking for? We're looking for the lost chord, which I believe is understanding his instructions according to the aleph-bet, the Mishkan pattern, his name. It's all in there. The stuff that was taken away, the stuff that was thrown away, the stuff that he allowed to be pillaged. And then the whole idea of going back and being Hebrew, being Israel, being the Am Yahweh, his people, is not because we're trying to be Judaizers. We're not trying to be legalists. We're not trying to be stupid idiots. We're trying to correct the stupid idiot legalism that everybody else has imposed over his simple declaration of his self, his ways, his treasure, and say, okay, let's go back and value the things he valued. And if somebody says, oh, guess what? He valued Hanukkah, not Christmas. And then we look a little closer and say, well, not really. So we can't do Hanukkah. You can do Hanukkah if you want, but it's not the prescribed path that he instituted. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. Other people are saying there's something wrong. Is there? I don't know. That's another investigation. I'm not even touching it. What I'm saying is, Hanukkah is not one of the 7 prescriptions of his Moedim in Leviticus 23 or in Numbers or Exodus or Deuteronomy. But he certainly favored the Maccabean revolt against the Antiochus Epiphanes, the Greeks in 300 or so BC, and for whatever that was, it's like Americans celebrating 4th of July where they got some sort of autonomy over the British fist, at least in some degree. Different matter. The point is, the reason for doing these things is to return to his favor, not to be under some other type of authority, which is just as lunatic as ones we came out from. Anyway, I'm going to jump down to verse 12, but before doing that, let me address the other verses. I'll just read them real quick. Another way to read this same thing, knowledge is a garment for listeners, a measuring instrument with which to investigate, like binoculars by which to spy out. So you could say, well, if knowledge is an instrument, or if knowledge is a tool, what's the word knowledge? You have a door, an eyeball, and a sign of the covenant. So you could say, well, ayin-tav was the word for time, and dalet is a door, and ayin is to see. So you could read this as, be aware of when the door opens. Well, we were just talking about 2010. Some kind of door opened. It was the end of the 2730-year curse. Yeshua claimed to be the door. What kind of a door? What did that mean? There was a door made available with the day when Yeshua was here. There's a door made available in 2010. And if we go ask our wonderful sages and leaders who supposedly know stuff and they're blind as bats or they are ignorant as fools and they can't tell us because they don't want to go there, then it leaves us to our own devices. And then we get to decide, what do these words mean? And if you don't want to believe what I'm saying, go ask your favorite rabbi and ask him to explain these words. He will not tell you that Yeshua claimed to be the door. So then there's a certain 1/3 of the understanding in that way of reading that word is lost. You go to a Christian and they say, oh, we don't care anything about that previous covenant, then another third is lost. So I'm saying the ayin dalet ayin tav has something to do with understanding when he said, I am the door, and understanding when he says, these are the terms of the covenant. To reconcile the two together is to see it like two eyes, binocular, three-dimensional, which neither one of the leaders in that, neither one of the official bishops on either one of those two tracks will tell you the truth. Or at least they haven't been on record as having done so for the last 2,000 years. And if they want to squabble about it, let them deal with the facts. Which I don't hear them doing. Nevertheless, another way to read this there's this phrase here. I'd have to go back and listen to the microscopic calculations. I'd have to go back and figure out where I got that from. Anyway, here.
Is it the same thing for kernel?
Yeah, it has to do with the word kernel, but that's down there. But there's this other phrase. Listen to the microscopic calibrations of philosophical analysis. And again, the word for philosophical analysis is in this word here. See, I'd have to sit there and read all these things through and show you the details of where I come up with that. And for the sake of not doing that, getting on with the next thing, there's this phrase that means that I pulled out of this, and I'd have to go back and figure out how I did that. But the point is, here's this phrase. The rules rule, overruling all else. Reality is allegorical, fractal, to be found everywhere in perfect balance. Which is to say, no misleading tricks. Okay, now that's what it seems to say. The rules rule. Something about what he set in order is the way it works, and everything else is overruled. So in other words, he's giving us something here of such locked-in, true, uncompromising reality that anything to the contrary is to the contrary. And it doesn't work. It doesn't fit. It's overruled. And as I was trying to fit that into words and thinking about that, according to every letter, all of a sudden I realized, what's the devil? The devil in some cultures is known as the trickster. He's the guy that changes the rules. He's the guy that trips you up and gets you tangled and confused. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute. According to this paradigm, this model of structure, this engineered structure, which is the support, the system, the skeleton, as it were, this is like a backbone and ribs, it can't be shaken, it can't be twisted, it can't be broken, which means, to go back to his Sefer, There's no devil. The devil's ejected. The devil is allowed to come in and try to pull us off the orientation of the truth and to twist and distort and to trick and to convolute and throw us out of whack to where, oh, I don't know what's going on now, and to be afraid and all this other stuff. But it seems like to go back into the mind of his mind, to see the way he organized things, the devil's ejected. Because in his capacity where you look at his rules, what did he design? Aleph-bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samakai, and Pei, Zadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav. That's what he put together. And in that structure, the devil can't exist. Where the devil exists is contrary, other word, change the day, change the festival, change the orientation, shuffle something around. He said to Adam and Eve, do this and you'll live. And so the devil comes in with an alternative. It's in the alternative that the devil's let in. So the people that like to do spiritual warfare, casting out the devil in Jesus' name, the only way for that to be a success would be for them to come back to the model of his Moedim, to exactly the matters where he testified of his reality, his Shem, the Mem Ayin of his Shin Mem, and for us to hear that. If any of the people that did spiritual warfare, kicking out the devil, if that would be successful, they would have to come to the sudden awareness that they should Shema and Shomer exactly what every letter of his aleph-bet meant. So apparently what they're doing isn't successful because it's not bringing them back to his Torah. Lameding, according to his fit garment. So if there's something wrong with that model, how do you find the right model? You can say all the fancy words of I cast out the devil in Jesus' name, and if it's not working, go back and do what he said. Shema, and find out how to do the shomer. It's right there in the words. The devil is automatically ejected because his rules rule, overruling everything else. And the devil is everything else. So when you change his name, change his day, change his Moedim, you're playing into the devil's playground. It's a simple matter of logical analysis, which is exactly what wisdom and da'at, and then the other word is bina, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, that's what it's all about.
It's like you said before, if you stay underneath his umbrella, or get out from under his umbrella, the rain has the authority to get you wet.
Which is what, I believe it's in Galatians, we're not under the law, and those who are under the law are under the curse. However that's phrased, is to say, the curse has the authority to be imposed upon you. It has been granted the authority. It is what happens when you get out from under this realm of jurisdiction. And what Yahweh did is he gave his people Israel the fit attire of what's called robes of righteousness. It's not, oh, just believe in Jesus and you get your robes of righteousness. Do what he said!
That's what Revelation says.
Huh?
And to her it was given to be arrayed in fine linen, which is the righteous acts of the saints.
Righteous acts?
Righteous
what
acts.
are acts? Doing what he said.
Yeah.
That's a shot. Hear, guard, keep, observe, and do. Out of love, that's the fourth verb, ahava. We talked about that the other day, last week.
Yeah.
Anyway, verse 10. Now this is, I believe, Kahillah, Solomon speaking. Solomon pondering these matters. The wealthiest man, he had no enemies until he brought in his 1,000 wives and concubines and let them set up their deities and became customs amongst the people and turned everybody's hearts, including his astray, and everything got twisted and convoluted and distorted. But here's what seems to be Solomon's expression of his heart, verse 10. Craving a resource, a library, an encyclopedia, wishing for a place to discover words of delight. For the beauty of finding one's bearings, I quest and pray for a treasury. Pleasure in the form of writing, plain, simple, true, profound, elegant, straight, right, adorned by perfection, truth as a matter of fact. Solomon was craving that, though he had everything any man could ever wish he had. Everything that just described is the Hebrew aleph-bet. Though it's only 22 letters long, it itself is a resource, a library, an encyclopedia, a place to discover words of delight. There's this lady, Rebecca, back east, which wrote up a translation. I have it on the computer, an email she said. I'll show it to you if you'd like. She looked at Daniel 9:24. It's 3 or 4 pages long. And she has found it to be, I think she called it refreshment for the soul. For her to find out how to read these words is a whole, not just a pool, but a river of living water of refreshment and delight. Just putting her mind on these words, opening them up, and they just like a geyser. And to see what she is doing, you'd have to not just read them, but apply your mind to it. But she's finding the same types of things that I found. It's a different analytical process than this, but it's one that I bumped into very similarly a few years ago. But I'm showing you a different path at this point. But I can show you what she found. But what I'm saying is there's something about finding what's in these words which is a geyser of refreshment. And when Yeshua said, I have things to eat that you don't know of, he wasn't talking about the sandwich that some guy got him from the cart. He was saying something about doing the will of the Father. Pleasure in the form of writing, plain, simple, true, profound, elegant, straight, right. That's all these letters if you know what they mean. It depends on if you have a variable in a mathematical equation, it all depends on what value you appropriate to each one of those variables as to what the equation will read like. Verse 11. Wise sayings expressed in practical, reasonable, eloquent terms, familiar, suitable, colloquial, hands-on, as it were, so I can avoid mistakes, which is to say, avoid jail, avoid the curses. And then Solomon again speaking, I believe he's saying, I feel compelled with responsibility. Make a collection of sharp-witted teachings by which to tend one's countrymen away from harm, united together in one accord as a single-minded community objective. So that's what Solomon did in writing together Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. He had the obligation as king and as Kohelet, the preacher. He felt this burden to collect all these things. And so for us to look back and study the words in Hebrew, much more significant than in Greek or English, I believe, is to play into the man who was gifted with wisdom beyond all other people and ever to walk the face of the earth, made a collection, again, of these things which are, so I can avoid mistakes, and united together in one accord as a single-minded community objective, a collection of very sharp but smooth and eloquent teachings by which to tend one's countrymen away from harm. What a noble objective. Okay, here's verse 12. Yatar is the same as this, to search. And this is the word ma. Kind of like mama, but ma, memhe is the word for what, why, where, how. What's that?
Oh, nothing.
Oh. If you're searching for something, say you're on a certain track, right? You're searching. Whether you're going from this direction to that direction, you're on this. I'm trying to show you another way to read this. This word here, this is from, and this this is translated as them or their. Do what now?
Just turn down the volume. You get it with your leg. the speaker. Just turn the dial to the left. Keep going.
Okay.